Hi, I am stand-up comedian Aranor Bruce, and I've taken highlights from podcasts, workshops, interviews, mostly from some of the world's greatest stand-up comedians and people of the industry. And I would listen to these playlists, these albums, religiously every day for months into years, and they're just too good and really precious to keep to myself. And so now I offer them to y'all, wrapped up into this nice little video of images that I've gimped for your enjoyment. So whether you're an amateur just starting out or whether you're a professional, there's some serious gold in here. So subscribe, and I'll see you on the stage.
I believe comics are trying to feel better. I believe that reason you do comedy is because you want to feel better. My friend Ed Driscoll, who's here, a very funny comic who might come up and talk, he sent me a thing from Chris Rock that said comics were mostly uncomfortable. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. But to get back to what I'm saying is if you're really serious about this, if you're really honest to God serious, if this is something you really want, it has to be monumental in your mind and in your life. It can't be secondary. It doesn't share with anyone else. It doesn't care about your relationship. I'm just telling you, it doesn't care about other people. It's an all-consuming, egomaniacal experience. It's power. It's top of the world. That's what you want. That's what this is all about, power, in my opinion. And the performance is, manifesting who you are and what you have to say. Because the second part of what I'm going to talk about, and first of all, just to go back to this thing, I cannot stress to you enough how many times and excuses you can have for not wanting to do it. I know those open stages in LA, they're shit a lot of times. I've done them. I've eaten it bad. I've just died a dog's death. After 20 Tonight shows, I still died a dog's death. Because I was not concentrating on my intent for that night. And it's about working out those jokes. And you have to go and work them out. And you do not have to work them out for the response, although it would be the preferable thing. You have to work them out so that you get used to saying them under all conditions. Like sometimes I'll get a corporate gig for a lot of money. And I hate that. I'm terrified from the moment I agree to do it. I go, I know it's a lot of money, but it will be a group of people who have gone to a place for a weekend from a company, and they will have a big dinner. First, they will go all week and do this shing-shang stuff, to learn about their company and all that stuff. And then they'll have a banquet or dinner at the end of it. And then after that banquet, where they went, I don't know what they're expecting, but I hardly ever think they're expecting to see me. Like strippers or a singer, but a comic, I'm not always sure that they are. And I have already defeated a big part of my performance. And so that's such a bummer, but I did earn it, didn't I? I had some bad shows. Everybody's had bad shows. That's where you learn everything. You don't learn one thing on a good show. You don't learn one thing when someone comes up to you and goes, great show. What do you learn shit there. You don't learn anything. You know what I learned? One time a guy said to me, Louis, if you would just do that family stuff and talk about your family and be clean, you'll become famous. And why I was listening to him, I have no idea. He was a nice, sweet person. He worked at a little club with us in Minnesota. But I don't know why I was listening to him, and it clicked in my head. And that thing will click in your head. That thing that Kyle says to you or someone says to you will click. Because what you're going for in those 90 performances or 180 performances is to find your point of view. Like when Miles was talking about how he felt and what he wanted to say and how he wanted to say it, he was looking for his point of view. My point of view is I want everyone to love each other. I come from a really unloving family, not intentionally, just really crazy. My dad was a drunk. My mom was a food pusher. That was her job. You hungry, Louie? We just ate. You look a little hungry. And that was her thing. Her thing was to love us through food, so it worked. I am in love with food. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to fix that situation. I think comics are trying to fix their situation. I think we're all trying to, hey, fix this thing that we have going on that people don't, because I don't think people understand comics necessarily. How many of you have been working as comics for more than a year? Okay. How many of you also are in a very successful relationship? So you have a few? That's good. But those two things.
The craft of comedy. Okay? The craft of comedy, I can teach you. That's the craft. That's the techniques. That's joke writing. That's joke structure. That's act outs. That's all the other things that you can. I can teach you. I can teach you all these techniques, hundreds of them, and the art of being funny. The art of being funny, I can't teach you. I don't teach talent. That's not what it. The art of being funny can only be learned on stage. Only that's why you can never take away the stage time. And that, so the good thing though is once you know that, oh, the art of being funny, I've got to get up and I've got to practice a lot, okay, and fail a lot and succeed a lot. Well, the craft of comedy has all these techniques. So if you've done the craft of comedy while you're putting in your time on stage, now you're practicing good technique instead of practicing bad technique and getting really good at bad technique. And the other thing is that when you're performing, you're not having to discover and figure out what the fundamentals are, which is what I had to do. Okay, I'd perform and then I'd go, what am I doing? What's working? And then I'd go, okay, that's that. Now I can repeat it once I know it's a fundamental. Okay, and so the only shortcut is to learn all these things. Now there's a step between the two of these, which is called the difference between knowledge and skill. Knowledge, there you go, knowledge, okay, that's not good enough. Okay, you've got to have a transition so that you have the skills. It's kind of like knowledge is knowing what riding a unicycle is. You have that knowledge, okay. Can you ride one? No, that's the skill. And there's only one way to transition from knowing what. So the first thing is you have to be present. And there's a lot of, we've gone over this before, that the rehearsal process helps you be present because you're going to be telling a story with pictures, sounds, and feelings rather than memorized words and internal dialogue and so on. So it doesn't matter in any way you want to look at it. You've got to practice putting that pause in there. That's the other reason we put the reveal at the end of the joke, so that also gives you a cue that that's the place you need to pause. Now, it's not just, it is about the laughter and pausing for the entire laughter and the timing of peak 2, 3, 4, then talk again. That's all part of it. But there's another reason that maybe helps you to understand why you need to do it. I'm part of the International Society of Humor Studies, the World Humor Conference, and I have seen MRIs of brains dealing with jokes. And the brain goes through, in order to get the setup and the punch, it goes through 4 different hemispheres, different places in the brain. Okay? So you get the setup, and then they have to get a first story in their head, a picture, until that all makes sense. And once they make sense, they go, oh, that's true. Right? Then you give them the punch, and they go, oh, there's an incongruity. There's something wrong. That doesn't really match. Then it's got to go back into the setup to figure out what in there had a double meaning or a different function. You know, once it resolves all that, then it goes over to the emotional center, and by then the person finds it to have humor in it, then they laugh. You have to pause for human processing. Some audiences process really fast. I've had audiences that process together kind of a little slower. So I'm just trying to get you to understand another reason that it's not just, oh, I'm pausing now for the laugh. It's being present to notice how long does it take this group of people to kind of process before the laugh comes out to you. Okay? And then the timing of letting them laugh start to come back down and then go to the next thing, because they have to process both the setup and the punch and the incongruity, and that takes some time for them to go through in order to get the laugh. And that's just one more reason other than just the laugh for you to practice taking that pause. How do you know when to write a tag for a joke? Well, the first answer, there's two answers, really, maybe more. First, every joke. Write a tag for a lot of beginners, and even people who have been around, they'll write a joke and they're so happy they wrote a good joke that they just move on instead of going, oh, how can I tag that punchline? And how can I tag that tag? And tag? For me, it's just a mindset that I've been practicing for years when I'm working with students. You know, I go, okay, we got a good joke there. Let's tag it. Let's tag the tag. Let's tag the tag. Let's tag the tag. Tag as many times as we can. Okay, and then you pick the ones that are best or whatever. You go out and perform them, find out which ones work. The other thing that I find that I've from watching so many shows of beginners like yourself, you get on stage and then you have a particular joke that gets this huge laugh, okay? And you're standing there going, yeah, it really was that way. Oh no, I was there. Gosh, maybe I should have done something. You find yourself wanting to say a bunch of stuff after because the laugh's so big, and you know you can kind of push it, but you haven't written anything. Well, look at those in your show, because you intuitively, with these inane comments, are trying to keep that laugh going because it's so big, but you haven't thought about it. You haven't identified that spot and said, oh, look, I'm making all these random comments afterwards. Each one of those is probably the perfect place for a tag, but you haven't thought about it, so you don't have anything written, a joke that's written there, but you're intuitively saying things. So that's the other really big, for me, like a cue in somebody's show that you need to put tags in there, because you're already trying to tag it. You're just you're doing something off the top of your head that can even almost be nonsense, and it's still working. Then if you really write a really good tag in those spots, you'll pop that laugh. It'll go up, 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 up. Maybe you can get, if it's a huge laugh, 4 or 5 more continuations of that laugh. So the two areas that you want to do is, one, first of all, just have the habit of just every time you write a joke or look at a routine, go, how can I tag that? And the other one is look at a show where you get a huge laugh and you're intuitively trying to tag it. That's a place where you definitely want to sit down and write those tags. He got up and he did material, okay? And the material was basically, because I had to work with him on that, was not trying to convince everybody that they're wrong from his point of view, only to say, here's how I see the world, okay? This is how I see it. And that's what I worked with him on. And his material, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, he was like going, because he'd been in the war in Iraq, and he was like, he says, hey, people say we should get out of that war. He said, we're doing too much. And he was like, I think we're doing too little. I want to go in there, I want to strafe until there's just sand. And then set up gas stations for America. Right? And I'm laughing and saying, people want to know what Jesus would do. I want to know what Julius Caesar would do. and I've got some fucking suggestions. I found myself laughing because he's got good jokes in there. Okay? And at the end of that I went, wow, I don't agree with any of that. I don't agree with that policy. I'm laughing because he didn't ask me to agree with his policy. He was saying, this is how I see the world. Chris Rock, I can't remember which concert it is, he gets in with women and he says, women will not take, his premise was, women will not take a step backward in lifestyle. And he always repeats his premises 3 to 5 times. Okay? But he then uses it a certain way, and you can see women just in the crowd don't agree with him. Okay? And he goes, oh, you think you'll take a step, but you won't. You know, oh, I know, you're a little upset at me, but you know, in your heart you know you won't take a step back in life. And he holds to that, even though the reaction is negative. And then he goes into the routine about it. And first, of course, then he goes kind of toward the guys, and he goes, yeah, guys, for instance, if you run into some hard times, okay, and you like lose your job or something, and your woman comes to you and says, it's okay here, there's a few things we can do without. She's talking about you. Okay, well, he didn't ask them to agree with his premise. He found the jokes within that to make them laugh. Okay, and that's what I'm after. That if you're ever talking about something that you know the audience is particularly, you're going to know that they're not going to necessarily agree with it because it is ideas that they may not agree with or society may not agree with, etc., that you can do that as long as you're there. You have to be really good at finding the humor and the jokes in that area which they disagree. And then you get up and do it, and sometimes it's going to hit, sometimes it's going to miss, but your best chance is to not try to persuade them, to make them agree with you, but simply present your point of view with the jokes and the humor in that, presenting it them as humor for them to laugh at. How do you recover from unexpected things happening during your show? Okay, first of all, let's go back to some of the fundamentals. Okay, so which is not to memorize your words, because then it becomes a set. And if those things interrupt you, and they will, then you will go completely blank. Okay, so if you've got it in picture, sounds, and feelings, you can deal with interruptions, look at the pictures, and come right back in where you were before. That's the first thing, is the rehearsal process sets you free to be more of in a relationship and be interrupted and recover. That's one of the big ones. Now, with that said, a lot of times these things are called floaters. They're like jokes and bits or things, etc., that float around you. That's why I call them float. You don't use them every show. You use them when that circumstance comes up, okay, and you have a joke for it. And those are things that, well, first of all, we all know about hecklers. So you should have at least like 5 heckle lines. You can pick them up in old joke books or sit down and write them or read insult joke books. Those are really good. And you do switching. Even though they're public domain, usually, well, that's a good idea, but I'd rather say it this way. Okay, but you get the gist of the insult of getting the person to shut up. But hecklers is a whole case unto itself that I'll discuss another time. But it's like you're saying, when somebody drops a drink, what do you say? What you do is make a list of all the things that could go wrong. Well, let's see, guys might even want to help me in here. Somebody drops a drink. A wait staff is talking too loud. So you wanted a Corona and a Martini. That happens in a show. What do you do during that, right? Sneezing, farting, cough. Oh, one time somebody farted. The whole place just stank to high hell, you know. Kayla came out and said, "Who shit themselves?" I mean, she had something to say. She called it because she just couldn't let it, I don't want to say linger. But it was horrendous. Anyway, What are all the things like that? Somebody drops a tray, a blender from a bartender. You know what I mean? You right during the whole joke and stuff like that. People having a conversation. Way in the back, they're having a conversation. Trying to think of calendar dates. Okay, when this is going to be St. Patty's Day on our show. Oh, we should have a joke for that. Come out, have a joke for dealing with that, as with every other basic holiday that we have out there. But it's anything, and people coming in late. That happens a lot. Somebody comes in late. What do you say? You're going to want to have a joke for all these unexpected things. And the more you perform, you're going to be adding stuff to that list. Because stuff does interrupt your show. Okay? And sometimes it's in hindsight that you kind of go and write a joke. And so I was at I used to perform at the Renaissance Fair. I had a character called the Obscene Juggler, and the answer to your question is my balls. That's what I juggle. And I was doing a show, and I was doing like 5 or 6 shows a day. They're about 20, 25 minutes long. And there was this guy with all these feathers, weird peacock feathers, and a weird costume. It wasn't Renaissance at all, and he walked around with a mastiff. You know what a mastiff is? It's basically a St. Bernard with short hair. Big jowls, slobbers, but the dog is enormous. And he walks out into an opening over here. The whole audience goes, whoom. And I'm like, yeah, that trying to get him back, and it took me a while, and he's standing there, staring at him because, he's such a spectacle. Okay, and so I went home that week, and I had the whole week thinking and looking over joke books and farting around and thinking about it. Finally, I twisted an old joke because I knew sometime in the course of the 6 weeks he was going to come back in and be there, and I wanted to be able to handle it if he did. So then, the very next day, that next Saturday, I'm up there and I'm writing the show, and he walks out like he did before because he likes the attention, and he knew he was getting the attention. And I just looked at him and went, "Sir, you there, you, that's a nice pig you've got." And he said, "It's not a pig, it's a dog." And I said, "I was talking to the dog." Place came apart, everybody's back on me. And then I pick up my show and start to rebuild the rhythms that I would build with them and stuff. And the fun part about this story is that after that show, I'm collecting money, passing the hat, and bump into him. This guy's huge, like 6'7". He went, "Yeah, you got a big laugh on me." And I went, "Yeah, I did. Yes, I did." That was a good one, wasn't it? He went, "Well, you want to do it every show?" I went, "Yeah, could you do it between this bit and this bit?" And walk out right after this bit, and then we'll do that. And for the rest of the fair, he did that like 2 or 3 times a day for me. And I looked like a genius. Anyway, the point is that you list all the things that you think can happen during a show, things that, and they're crazy things, but there's a lot of things that I guarantee you, if you perform as a professional, will repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And if you have, like I had that comment, you have that comment to bring the audience from looking at that whatever incident and bring them all back to you, so you can continue into your show. Then that puts you much more in charge of the show because you go in prepared for the unexpected.
You're doing a lousy job. To be or not to be? What are you doing? Come on. That's not even original. What are you doing? Come on. Say, all right. Did you pay your bills? It's constant. That criticism. If you're criticizing yourself and rehearsing at the same time, you're rehearsing criticism into the fiber of your show. I'll say it again, if you're criticizing yourself and rehearsing at the same time and in the same location, you'll never get free of self-criticism because you're rehearsing it into the show. Go back to the principle. However you rehearse is how you're going to perform. However you rehearse is how you're going to perform. If you're rehearsing self-criticism into your show, you're going to perform with self-criticism. You can't get away from it because you put it in the show. So, Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm asking you to separate these two things. I want you to have a rehearsal space and a critic spot. And I want them to be separate.
And then I found NLP, worked with John Grinder for 2.5 years, side by side. I taught side by side with him a lot.
Wow, yeah. Tony Robbins is really good for putting it out there, but wow.
Yeah, John's the source. And
Wow.
I'm better than Richard. Richard kind of was, it was really weird. John Grinder and Richard Bandler, they were kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. They both had these incredible insights into how the mind works, and they studied all these things, and they could do hypnosis and all these. John was really trying to do the good, and Bandler was more like, hey, we can manipulate people into buying shit.
Right.
And John was like, we want to influence is that you're helping somebody attain their own goal, not yours. And that's what I liked about John. John was real clear that he wanted it to be a positive influence. And he taught me modeling, and I started modeling out comedy. I was already kind of doing it, but then he gave me the model for the model. He kept saying it's not a fundamental unless you have a sensory explanation for it. How does it affect the senses? How does it affect the mind? And that, every time I'd get stuck, I'd always go back to that. Like even the joke diagram with the three mechanisms. That's how I kind of uncovered all that, which was to go, well, expectation and surprise had been around for a long time. Since Aristotle. And that was really important in humor theory because it was the first time somebody went, there's two parts here. It has to have two parts. You have to have this expectation and surprise thing. Now, that's not necessarily true now in humor theory. That's kind of been debunked, but that was a good start. That it was, and where I came along and I went, expectation as a result. Following John Grinder's advice was, well, what's my mind doing?
Right.
And I realized I was making assumptions. And
we all do all the time.
Right. It's constant. But you see, as soon as you know what people are assuming, you find out what exactly they're assuming, what's causing them to assume something, and then it dawned on me, then I could create it. First, the thought was, it came to me in a dream, actually, for the joke writing system. I was working on it, and I took a nap because I was tired of proofreading, and woke up, and I went, one assumption's the setup, and a different assumption is the punchline of the same thing. Holy crap. And later turned into target assumption and reinterpretation, right? But that was the way it organized originally in my head was, these are two different meanings of the same thing. They're both assumptions, still an assumption. Even the second one really is an assumption.
Yes.
Because you can use it to tag a joke. If you say, for Father's Day, I took my father out, only took 7 shots. Okay, we assume he got shot, and then you tag that. Then you tag. I could always drink him under the table. Now shots means something different again.
Okay.
The fuck were you doing under the table?
There's that.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the whole. That's where that started, and then the joke writing system kind of bubbled up out of that. And I think the other thing that was really powerful about that was the punch premise and the setup premise. I'm the only person that I know that has really defined the premise. But if you watch really great comedians, they do this. A premise is just a negative opinion about a subject. In other words, what are you going to talk about, and what's your position? Louis C.K., my 4-year-old daughter's an asshole. Right? Chris Rock, women won't take a step back in lifestyle. Those are all clear premises. Because
this is where I stand here.
Yeah, exactly. That's what are you talking about, and what stand are you taking? What position are you taking? That's how I get to know you. That's your message. Right? That's the message. That premise is the message. This is what I'm talking about, and this is my stance. So this is to, and then all the jokes that follow are simply examples of that premise.
Wasn't it so difficult to have A, B, and C? Yeah, there were definitely hardships, tough times, but every day I could wake up and go, there's a stage somewhere I can get on tonight, and I know I can get laughs. And at the end of like this, whatever this long career is, and I hope I'm 90 complaining backstage like my mentor, but I look at it and go, to be able to night after night get on stage and try to figure out something that connects with a crowd, like that's the challenge that never gets boring or lessens, you know?
You stepped out at an intelligent time. And so then you started your comedy career, and you started at open mics. And so, tell me about how that developed.
Well, open mic nights are very interesting. You sign up on a list, and you may or may not get on. They pick people out of a hat. Like, say if there's 50 people sign up, 30 people get on. And, you each do 5 minutes. And, the host is generally a professional comedian that brings people up. And, you have this weird culture of people that are struggling to try to figure out how to make a living in this sort of undefined art form. There's no classes you can take in it that are really worth anything. There's no books that you can buy that are going to teach you anything. It's something that you kind of have to. The only thing that I liken to is rap music, because rap music seems to be very similar in the fact that you have to learn from other practitioners. You don't really learn from books. There's no maybe there is now. I don't know of any real legitimate university courses on stand-up comedy. I don't think they could teach it to you anyway because everyone does it differently. But I think that's the case with rap music as well. I think you kind of have to learn from the people that are already doing it. And one good thing about stand-up comedy, particularly today it's much more open and inviting, and comedians have a lot more camaraderie than they did in the beginning because they're not fighting over scraps anymore. Now there's so many venues, so many different places to work, and then there's YouTube and the internet, and comedians, there's much more of a supportive community of people trying to help people. And I try to really concentrate on that. I spend a lot of time trying to help young comics. I put a lot of young comics on my shows. I have them host. I've got a show tonight, and a young comic who's only been doing it for a few years. Her name's Ali Makovsky. She's the host of it. She's really funny. And I try to encourage them. I try to help them. I try to give them advice. I try to give them pointers. I try to, when they have great sets, I try to, really thank them and say that was excellent and you got this. Just keep doing what you're doing, and you can really make a career doing this, because it's such a insecure business. It's such a weird, undefined path that you have to take. And I love the art form. I love it as a consumer. I love it as a person who's an audience member. I really still to this day enjoy watching stand-up. But back then, it wasn't that supportive. It was, we would just support each other, but the professionals weren't that supportive. Not like they are today. A few people, there's a guy named Lenny Clark that I'm still good friends with to this day. And I opened up for him. He was a Boston legend. And I was super fortunate to open up for him when I had been doing comedy for about a year. And he gave me some great advice, and that meant the world to me. And he was actually on my podcast just last month. I love that guy. And, he helped me out when I was I was 21. I was really, really young in my comedy career.
And so you started putting the same amount of dedication into that you had been putting into the martial arts.
Exactly. Yeah, I just became obsessed with it. And I just traveled all over the place doing open mic nights. I mean, me and my good friend Greg Fitzsimmons, we started out together. We're good friends to this day. We started out within a week of each other. And we used to travel all the way to Rhode Island. We would drive, it was an hour plus drive to go down there just to do 5 minutes. And then we were at an open mic night for free. And then we'd drive all the way home and just dream about one day being a professional. That was the dream. The dream was to pay your bills by doing comedy.
Right.
Imagine if that you could do comedy for a living. Like, that was the dream. I would never imagine that I'm doing what I'm doing now, where I'm doing these sold out arenas. Like that wasn't even a hope. And it wasn't even like, maybe if it goes well, I could do this. Maybe I could do that. That was never on the menu. And, it's gotten to this really crazy, astronomical place now that it's very hard for me to even imagine that came out of those strange days in Boston, just traveling around to all these different weird comedy clubs and writing constantly and not knowing how to write, not knowing how to formulate a joke, having like many more misses than hits. You know, a lot of bombing. I bombed all the time. I
that's
humiliated
something
on stage.
as well, man. You know, you got to have that ability to bomb and come back from it. I mean, because you're going to have a lot more misses than hits. That's for sure. That's a
lot more. Yeah.
So,
especially in the early days.
How many shows did you film?
We did 2. And it wasn't the same night either, so it was kind of weird. Rather than like bam, bam, so you're warmed up, I kind of had to get going both times. So, and like most times, it was the set that I liked better. It was probably, I think, the second night. So most of it's from the second night, and then there's just a couple, just because it went a little too long, and I just wanted to get in, kick the shit out of him, and get out, leave him wanting more, the old school thing.
I think you said involuntary is the key.
Yes. You can't choose to do it. You have to do the line right. You have to do it correctly right now, or that it's just silence. So the brutality of that also is very, very appealing to me. Comedy is not a pool swim, it's an ocean swim. You're going to get tumbled around. And I like that too.
But I mean, like that to me, in a way, is really comforting. Do you know what I mean? Like when you see the outrage over like jokes about horses and hats, you're like, all right, like we should kind of just lean into this.
It's fascinating because and by the way, we all have friends that are flamethrowers, right? Yeah. But you had it with like Louisiana, right?
Sure, and more.
You know.
Yeah, but it's
and
a few topics.
Yeah,
perhaps,
and there'll be a few more coming. But now I learned from that. Yeah. That was actually a great learning experience.
What did you learn?
I learned that the outrage, it's like fireworks going off. And everyone goes like, holy shit. And you look at it. And then like, all of a sudden when you're watching a fireworks show, you're like, is it over? And you're like, yeah, it's over. It's like that.
Yeah. It's like a wave of bullshit.
You have to... The thing I learned is like you don't engage the outrage,
right? And you also it's like there's certain calluses that develop where you're like, all right, that's just a couple idiots.
Yes,
that's just a couple idiots. That's not a reflection of everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I did a whole episode of a show that was about a tweet I did. My wife had gotten her nails done. And she was like, see? And I was like, I don't care about your nails. And I did a tweet about how, like, I don't care. Men don't care about women's nails. And the nail community came at me.
Great.
And it was like, I think it was like, at that time, Tumblr, 800,000 retweets.
Oh, my gosh.
800,000.
You don't care about nails?
But it was just, and I think, like, someone... Like some professional football player even was like, I think nails are beautiful, Jim. Like, and I was like, it was, I think it was a tight end for the 49ers or a receiver for the 49ers. But I was like, this is just absurd.
Yeah.
Just the outrage.
The outrage over a nail.
I know.
You know what freaked me out in that movie that I couldn't believe? The violence against women. Like the scenes, the fight scenes. I don't want to give anything away. But there was some where you're like, whoa, you could still do this in a movie? Yeah. Like, holy shit.
That's my favorite quote from Tarantino.
What?
I saw an interview one time, and they were saying, like, I was trying to write movies and stuff, and they were going, like, you can't do this, you can't do that. And he's like, wait a minute. He goes, I can do whatever the fuck I want. It's like that. Well, that's why your movies are great.
Yeah.
Whether you like them or not, you're just like, that's the comic I want to watch. I can say whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
Good. I want to see you totally unfiltered.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, there's a time and a place, I think, to be filtered.
Sure.
You know what I mean? There's no sense just going in and showing your ass and being if somebody hires you for a private gig and they go, okay, perform between these two lines. You're not Lenny Bruce if you go in there and you go outside and you're a fucking asshole.
Right.
Because you agreed to do that.
Right. You do a corporate gig for a Christian church.
Right. But if you're at like a comedy club, it's like, no, you're a guest.
Yeah.
You came into a nightclub, so this isn't, if you don't like it, you leave. But
they came to see you specifically, and all the other people did too. And the one or two people that'll get upset, well, you're the problem. The other people are there to see this kind of shit.
It's
so rare to
incredibly
see.
selfish. It'd be like if I went to a restaurant and I didn't like the meal, and then the chef owed me an apology and had to change his menu.
And you didn't want anybody else to eat. Stop eating. I hate this food.
And if you go in there and eat off of that menu, then you're part of the fucking problem. And I'm going to try to take you down too.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have a problem with this fucking chicken and dumplings, whatever the fuck he's making.
Yeah.
Strange time.
Strange.
Best name special, I feel.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what else to call it. It's just, that's all I could think of.
Yeah, I like it because it's not, you're not punching them in the, you just say it's strange. It's a weird time.
Yeah. Paper tiger.
Yep.
Yeah, I ate shit. And one other time I ate shit real bad, I was headlining as well. This one is not nearly as bad as the other two eat shits. The Jim Brewer one was devastating. But in all fairness, it was good for me. Because it changed my act. It made me realize, like, you got to respect people's fucking attention span. You can't go up there thinking about yourself and trying to. You got to respect these people. Paid money, work hard.
Yep.
Like, you got to be ready, and you can't fucking take headliner gigs when you're not ready to headline.
Yeah.
I remember I did the same place a year and a half later and fucking murdered, and I was so happy. The guy said, "Wow, you fucking got better." I'm like, "Thank you."
Yeah, your material is your best friend. It's a concept of the idea is that you're a road comic, and a little bit when you're in your beginning and going out into the clubs and stuff, it's the thing you can kind of rely on. But when you really go out on the road, everything changes. Everything is different all the time. Okay. You go out of the same airport, but in a different plane and a different thing. You get someplace, it's a different Uber driver, it's a different people at the hotel, it's a different people at the club, it's a different audience. Everything is constantly changing. And the hard part is that you're interfacing with mostly people who really hate their jobs, right? They really do, all these people. You have a show, and you've got this confidence in the show that almost every time you can get up and make a bunch of strangers laugh. Okay? That's amazing, and that's what I'm talking about. It's your best. It's the thing that you have some control over. Okay? You don't have any control over the audience, or any of the flying, or any of the hotel. You don't. You don't have it. This is this it's kind of like an emotional support animal, right? Well, it's more like an emotional support entity. You got to take care of it. You don't have to clean up after it, but some shows I've had to. But it's the way that I talk about it should be like a living thing. You're constantly adding to it, cleaning it up. Feeding it, changing it, experimenting, having fun. It's almost like a living thing. It's creative. It should be constantly growing and stuff. But there's a consistency there that you walk into a completely ever-changing world. And when you have that show that you can rely upon, it's the best thing in the world, because when you go into those clubs, you just know you're going to be able to entertain a whole bunch of strangers, and you do that by using this best friend who joins you in this performance for all these people, and it gives you the confidence and the bravery to enter that ever-changing world.
I honestly think right now it's the best time in a long time to be a comedian. I think we are now become counterculture. For the first time, maybe since Lenny Bruce or maybe since Kinnison, comedy's cool again. It's underground, especially in New York, where you got to literally go downstairs in most of the rooms to be in these basements, and people going in there going like, they know the fucking all the stuff they hear about rape jokes and race and gender, and they're like, this comic might not just say something offensive, he might be putting his career on the line. Yeah. And that is fucking cool, man. It's like the Cotton Club back then when Batman's parents got killed,
Yeah.
It's like, this is some dark shit, and they're happy to be part of it.
Don't underestimate the power of your speech. Your capacity for speech is divine. It's the thing that generates order from chaos and then sometimes turns pathological order into chaos when it has to. Don't underestimate the power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Now, in order to speak what you might regard as the truth, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to think, all right, I'm going to say what I think, stupid as I am, biased as I am, ignorant as I am. I'm going to state what I think as clearly as I can, and I'm going to live with the consequences no matter what they are. Now, the reason you think that's an element of faith. The idea is that nothing brings a better world into being than the stated truth. Now, you might have to pay a price for that, but that's fine. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. So if you're going to stand up for something, stand up for your truth. It'll shape you because people will respond and object and tell you why you're a fool and a biased moron and why you're ignorant. And then if you listen to them, you'll be just that much less like that the next time you say something. And if you do that for 5 years, you'll be so damn tough and articulate and able to communicate and withstand pressure that you won't even recognize yourself. And then you'll be a force to contend with. Okay, so we'll address that directly. It is not safe to speak, and it never will be. But the thing you got to keep in mind is that it's even less safe not to speak, right? It's a balance of risks. It's like you want to pay the price for being who you are and stating your mode of being in the world, or do you want to pay the price for being a bloody serf, one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that, right? No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you, because of course you've never stood up for yourself. It's like, say what you think carefully, pay attention to your words. The price it's a price you want to pay if you are willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. And in the most real sense, if you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. And nothing better could possibly happen to you. There'll be ups and downs, and there'll be pushback, and there'll be controversy and all of that, but it doesn't matter. The truth is what redeems the world from hell, and that's the truth. And we saw plenty of hell over the last 100 years, and we haven't learned a bloody thing from it. It's like, wake up, tell the truth. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. That's a start. And you got to understand that's a risk. Students were tremendously welcoming when I came back to teach in January. I haven't had a single negative incident at the university. And I've received thousands of letters from people all over the world, all of which have been in support. I've received 2 negative letters. That's it. 2. So the people have an inchoate longing to have the sort of thing that we're talking about articulated. And so don't be thinking you're alone. It's just that people can't talk, they're afraid to talk, or they don't know what to say. And those are real problems. So if you're reasonably articulate, start talking and sharpen yourself up. I mean, the enemy is a cloud. They're a cloud of gnats. They're only courageous in groups. They're only courageous in mobs. If you stand your ground and don't apologize and articulate things properly, they'll disperse around you like they're not even there. So most of it's illusion. So don't be afraid, but be afraid of the right thing. And the right thing you should be afraid of is not saying what you say, because that's the same as not being. And here you are, suffering away. You might as well be at the same time. At least then there's something to you.
When I'm on stage, I get real happy up there. Like maybe that's the only time in my adult life that I feel like myself. You're standing up there, you know what I mean? Like a gladiator. And them lights is on you, and you look down, and everyone's looking up at you like... And it's just all these smiles around you, and they get dressed. They put perfume on and stuff, and they're going to see your show. It's the best feeling, man. I love stand-up.
That's why I love my art form, because I understand every practitioner of it. Whether I agree with them or not, I know where they're coming from. They want to be heard. They got something to say. There's something they notice. They just want to be understood. Love this genre. It saved my life. These people are at least as influential to me as my family.
We fight and we fuss and we are jealous of each other and we get mad at each other, but my life wouldn't have been what it was without each and every one of them, and I consider them my family.
So there's a club in Los Angeles. When I moved to Los Angeles and I was brand new in comedy, there's a club there that it's like the best club in the country. It's called the Comedy and Magic Club. It's actually in Hermosa Beach. This club is extremely hard for a comedian to get into. The way I got into this club is a guy named George Wallace saw me when I lived in New York. He knew I was funny and clean. So when I moved to Los Angeles, he took me to the Comedy and Magic Club. Now, he couldn't get me on stage because it's way too prestigious of a club. They have to know who you are. So he got me into the green room. I'm in the green room, and suddenly, brand new in town, and I find myself in the green room with some soldiers in comedy. There's George Wallace, Gary Shanley, Jay Leno. I'm brand new in town. And at the time, a football player got hit in the eye with a flag, and he lost his vision in one eye, and he was suing the league for $400 million. Now, all of these guys are helping Leno on that joke subject for the monologue for the Tonight Show on NBC. I ain't saying nothing. I'm just happy to be in the room sharing French fries with these dudes. But your gift will make room for you. So then they got quiet and they all looked at me and I'm thinking, oh, snap. This is an opportunity. So I was like, all right, let me see if I got this right. He got hit in the eye with a flag. He lost his vision in one eye and he's suing the league for $400 million. He not going to see half of it. Like, for real. So here's the thing. How did I get that joke that fast under that much pressure? The truth is, it wasn't as much pressure as you might think because I had been practicing since I was a child in the form of a kid who was having a hard time reading. I was practicing just like you've probably been practicing. You just didn't know you were practicing. I'm here to let you know you've been practicing. And for a lot of you guys, it's game time. It's game time. And I'm headlining at the club, and right before I get on stage, I had a change in mindset about comedy. Most of the time when a comedian gets on stage, he wants to get laughs from people. And I felt a shift take place. Instead of going up there to get laughs from people, I felt like I was supposed to give them an opportunity to laugh. I did a little prayer and I clearly felt like I was supposed to give an opportunity to laugh. This changed everything. Because now I'm not looking to take, I'm simply looking for an opportunity to give.
The story goes that one morning, Tom Papa's over at Jerry Seinfeld's house, and he's doing the New York Times crossword puzzle. And Seinfeld's like, what? A comedian doing a crossword puzzle? Your act is a puzzle. Figure that out. So, now that's advice from Jerry Seinfeld, a guy that writes every single day. A little FYI, he has a calendar. And every day that he writes, he puts a red X on that calendar, a print calendar. He's old school. And that way he can see how many days in a row he's writing, even at that level. And again, you don't get to that level without writing like that anyways. You don't get to the NFL as a professional football player by, just doing the minimum or, not doing the extra work. You don't get to the NBA without doing the extra work. Michael Jordan was one of the best ever, if not the best ever. And his whole argument was first on the court, last off the court. And so do the work. If you're going to be on that level, do the work and put your puzzle together about yourself and about your life. It's very rewarding on many levels.
This little boy pulls off his mask and introduces himself to me in a way, and I can't even tell you what it meant to me. And he started talking to me for like 9 minutes like I wasn't doing a comedy show at the time. But it was all because I made this shift. I made this change, and I said simply, instead of trying to get, I'm going to see if there's an opportunity to give. If you can make this adjustment, it will change your life for the good. If you're a mechanic, you may think you get paid to fix vehicles, but if you can make this shift, you will recognize you help people reach their desired destination. That will put your alarm clock out of business. My senses are there's a lot of people out there still hitting the snooze button. Before I bounce means to vacate the premises. I'd like to explain to you how life works, at least from a comedian's perspective. First, there's a setup, and then there's a punchline. Your setup is your talents, your resources, and your opportunities. And most of the time, we use our setup to ensure that the people around us are moving in a direction that serves us, which means the punchline occurs when you change that direction in a way they're not expecting. You actually use your setup for other people. The results are the same, yet multiplied. Revelation, fulfillment, and joy. But it's not just for the one receiving your punchline. It is absolutely for you as you deliver the punchline. In fact, if I ask the question to everyone here, everyone watching, if I ask you this question, how many people here know what your setup is? Every one of you would be able to tell me. Because your setup is the fact that you have a house, a car, you've been married, you went to school. Your setup is about what you've received. But what if I ask the question, what is your punchline? Because your punchline is about what you're called to deliver. And if you only know your setup and not your punchline, you'll make the mistake of trying to add more setup. If I could just get another degree, if I could just get married, if I could just lose weight. But what you really need is to know your punchline. Again, because to know your setup and not your punchline is an uncomfortable place to live. What about your story? You've been living it your entire life, and if all you know is the setup and not the punchline, you are living in an uncomfortable place. And please be clear, just like when I had a hard time reading as a child, your setbacks are part of your setup so you can deliver the punchline you're called to deliver. Much like a slingshot, the further you've been set back, the further you're going to reach. But what are you going to aim for? Everyone has a setup, and everyone has a punchline. You need to find your punchline and deliver it. I'm Michael Jr. I love you. Thank you, guys. Oh, you guys are awesome. Stand an ovation. Thank you so much. Thank you.